I feel like for everything to make sense, we have to actually talk about how exactly we met, which was Instagram of all places. But what a fantastic tool, seriously.
It's the best. I'm so glad that it's opened a whole new world, too.
Yeah.
And I started following you because probably Instagram suggested someone, and maybe it was the Armenian thing, or I don't know, but I vacuous me. I thought, oh, she's pretty. Who's she? Oh. And then I went into your page and I went, oh, this is really interesting. And I started really looking at it, and then I followed you.
Well, so I noticed you following me, and I was like, well, she looks interesting. Who is that? And then when I went on your page, I saw, obviously, all of your photos with Cher, and then the iconic Met Gala photos, and you looked like twins. And I was like, well, Paulette Howell. Is she? I didn't think for a second that you might be Armenian, but then when I saw your photos looking like twins, I was like, well, that's interesting. And then so, of course, I start going through all of your photos, and I saw photos of your beautiful parents. I mean, they looked like movie stars, but I saw the Armenian eyes.
I'm 100% Armenian on both sides.
Both sides.
But I swear when I didn't dye my hair till I was 40, and I went red instead of dark brown, like you.
Yeah.
Well, you're darker than I was too, but all of a sudden people didn't think I was Armenian anymore, which is kind of odd to me because I feel Armenian, you know?
Okay, so tell me about your childhood. What was it growing up? What was it like growing up? Were you born here?
I'm first generation born in this country, and my mother and father met in Cairo, Egypt, after World War II. My dad was in the OSS, and he was preparing to return to D.C. to be a founding member in the CIA. Of course, that's all before me, but I'm giving you background to see how I got here. So my mother's family had fled the genocide. My Metzmama, my grandmother, and my grandfather came to Cairo to see the relatives that had fled, and they decided that there was an enclave in Khartoum, Sudan, in Africa, where they could have a start and have a store and make a life and a family. So my mother was raised in Khartoum, came to Cairo, met my father. He marries her within 3 weeks. They go back to Washington, D.C. He's a founding member of the CIA. My mother gets pregnant with me, and I'm born in Washington, D.C. in 1950.
Okay, that's a whole... I have so many questions because there are so many fascinating aspects to this. But first of all, before we even get into your dad being one of the founding members of the CIA as an Armenian man, what was your childhood like? Are you speaking Armenian in the household?
Well, we traveled probably for the first 6 years of my life, and 3 of those years were in Beirut. I spoke Arabic because the housekeeper was Arabic, Armenian because my parents spoke Armenian with each other, always did, always have. And I spoke French because I went to a French nursery school because Lebanon was a French protectorate. It was occupied by the French. So French, Arabic, and Armenian came before English. And when I returned to the United States, 2nd grade, I said, I'm American. I don't want to speak all those languages. And I literally refused to speak Armenian at home anymore. And I forgot all my French, totally forgot Arabic. I had to relearn French. And I always understood my parents. They speak a different dialect than you do because they're from what's Turkey now, Ottoman. It's a different accent, so I do better with it. But so I grew up in a household that my parents spoke Armenian, and my sister and we traveled. We continued to travel. We lived in Greece. I picked up Greek when I lived there because I was in middle school. I was 12, 13, 14, 15. So you remember more when you're older. But yeah, that's how it went. My parents always spoke Armenian with each other. I understood them, but always spoke English back to them.
So did you feel Armenian growing up, even though you were no longer speaking the language?
True confessions. I wanted to fit in, as a lot of kids do. And that's why I didn't want to speak any other language. I didn't want to be tall like I am. I didn't want to have curly hair. I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes and fit in. And that was silliness, growing up. And then, of course, I was so proud to be Armenian. And when you grow up and you realize your heritage and what it means to come from where you come from, and when I realized how different my upbringing was, having been raised all over the world and exposed to different cultures and having parents that my dad spoke 8 languages, my mother spoke 6, like all of that, all of a sudden it hit me. You just take your parents for granted. Like your parents are so artistic and talented, but you're proud of it, and you really know to look at them and go, wow, I'm so amazed at what you do. I didn't come to it until after school. I didn't come to it till I became an adult, after 18, and that's when it all clicked in that, wow, your parents were really special, and that's when it hit me.
Do you remember what the exact switch was?
Well, I can tell you, I met Cher when I was 21. I can tell you what happened next. I was on one of my trips. I have wanderlust, always have. Probably 6 months before I was to leave with Sonny and Cher. I went to college for 1 year, and then I quit, and I was traveling the world with the Hobie surf team because my boyfriend surfed for Hobie, and my parents were devastated because, of course, I quit college, and I'm now with a bunch of hippie surfers that are dealing marijuana to fund all the trips. I mean, not proud. My father's in the CIA, and I'm with a bunch of pot dealers. So then when I finally got tired of it, it all hit me. I was on the North Shore of Oahu in Hawaii, and I got tired of just smoking pot every day, and I thought, this isn't who I was meant to be. And I'd gone to school for fashion, and I'd modeled when I was in high school, and I wanted to be alive and get dressed and have a purpose. And it all hit me along with my heritage. What have you done to your parents? And I called them, and I said, I'm ready to come home. And literally, I flew home, and the day I flew home, I met Sonny and Cher.
How did that happen?
I lied to my boyfriend in Hawaii, the surfer, and I told him I had to go to a wedding, but I'd be back. Well, there was a wedding. One of my best friends was getting married in Washington, D.C., and she was marrying the son of the owner of a place called Shady Grove Music Fair, and Sonny and Cher were performing there. They had a hit in 1965 when I was in high school, but I didn't know about TV because I was with surfers. We didn't watch TV. And they had the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour, but literally there was no TV on the North Shore then. It was 1972. So she invited me to go see the concert that night, and I'd come there for her wedding, and she said, just come with me to the show and we'll go backstage afterwards. So I went to the concert, and it was fine. And then I was backstage with my friend Susie, and it was her father-in-law that owned this whole place, Shady Grove Music Fair. And I was just there. I remember what I was wearing. And Cher walked in with her daughter, Chastity, at the time, now her son, Chaz. But it was the green room, and there was a bunch of, food in the room and drinks and stuff. And she just wandered in. And I was talking to my girlfriend, and we had met a couple of the people in Cher's band that had been in the room before. Actually, one of their tour manager was flirting with me. And so I was kind of talking to him and everybody. I was 21, and Cher walked in, and she said to me, you don't look like anybody in here. Why do you look so different? And it's because, first of all, I was black from living in Hawaii and all these places, tan. I had curly hair down to my butt, and I was in like a black tank top and black bell bottoms, and everybody else in the green room, in the room for all their guests, was like a senator's wife or somebody, wearing like a suit and pantyhose and a pocketbook. It was that time when everybody, like because it was Washington, D.C., so it was political type people. And there I was looking a little different. She goes, "Why do you look so different?" And I go, I don't know, because I'm Armenian. She said, "You're Armenian? I am too, inch beses." And I said, "You're Armenian? I thought you were Native American." Well, we said Indian back then, but it's Native American. And she said, "No, I am Armenian on my father's side." That was our first thing. So that connection when you're 21 means something, like that's who I am. And we bonded on that. And she said, "What are you doing tomorrow? Do you have time to go shopping?" And I said, "Let me check my schedule." "Yeah, I'll come." And she got a car and we went shopping. And then from that moment on, then she invited me to come on tour with them, and I left for New York with them. And then the tour manager, who was kind of flirting with me, continued to flirt with me. And so I moved to Malibu. Like after meeting her for one night, I was kind of in the crowd and off on a new adventure. And of course, my parents were thrilled. Instead of thinking, "What the hell is she doing?" Quitting college to be a surf bum. Now they could brag and say, "She's with Sonny and Cher on tour."
Well, I remember you mentioned when we had lunch that your mom was also excited about the friendship because she was proud that we had such a famous Armenian in that world, yeah?
Not just a famous Armenian, but the most stylish and chic. And she was kind of the epitome of fashion. Even today, everybody references her. "Look at you. You have parted down the middle, straight, beautiful, long black hair." And she did it at a time it was just, she was a fashion plate on our TV sets. And up till that point, everybody kind of looked older. It was more, it was a different time. And she made everything hip and cool and stylish and chic and with an edge.
How much did you know about her right prior to meeting her?
Well, honestly, because when I was in high school, Sonny and Cher had a hit called "I Got You, Babe." And I was 15 and she was 19. She's 4 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And that made a difference because then heavy rock came in and I started listening to like Led Zeppelin and all of that.
Yeah.
So when I went to college and then afterwards when I was with the Surfers, I'm listening to the Stones and to Led Zeppelin and the Doors, and I'm not listening to Sonny and Cher. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, they went from this period when they were pop stars and had hits to a kind of dry period where the music became heavier and they no longer had hit records. And Sonny tried to pivot their career into first film that didn't work out. And then he said, "Okay, I'm going to put on a tuxedo. You're going to put on a gown and we're going to go do like Vegas kind of show, like a husband and wife duo." Mm-hmm. And so they got their TV show contract because Fred Silverman, who was the head of CBS, had seen them as a guest on the Mike Douglas show doing they had a banter about them, He was always saying something and she'd say something sarcastically back to him. So they got a TV show, and my mother used to tell me about it, but I hadn't seen it yet. So there was a big disparity between the Sonny and Cher that did "I Got You, Babe," and then now all of a sudden they're on the TV and they're opening the show with "I Got You, Babe," but they've got so much more, going on.
Yeah.
And so that's when I met them, was right when they got the show. 1 year into the show is when I met them, and she and I became best friends.
So tell me what that first day of hanging out is like when you guys go shopping together.
Well, I was kind of just in awe of her, and it's funny because her memoir just came out in September, and she said it so perfectly. She said, a huge compliment. She said it was like a ray of sunshine when I met Polly because she wasn't like anybody I'd met. And in her world I knew nothing, meaning Cher was green, because I was like this wild child that had already experienced. I gone to Europe for 4 months with my best friend, and I lived with surfers, and I'd gone to college, and I'd met all these people, crazy people, and she had been nonstop working, and by then had her daughter, Chastity, now her son, Chaz, and so she had a completely different life in her teenage years because she met Sonny at 16, and I was the opposite. I was a wild child. So she said I was kind of green in her world, and she knew nothing about my world. So we shared each other's worlds. And it's true, because I used to tell her stories about, then we broke onto the Acropolis and it was the full moon and we were playing music and, crazy stories about, stuff that 18, 19, 20-year-olds do that she never experienced because she was pregnant and having a baby at 19, So it was just different. But from the first time we went shopping, I was in awe of her. I was like, whoa, this is weird, because I had never been a fan of somebody to the point where, I want to know everything about this person and put their picture on I've never been that with anybody. I mean, I loved rock and roll music and the bands, but I didn't write to any Beatles or, I never did that. So I didn't have any preconceived notions meeting her. And when she performed, there was nothing like her. Like, she's just mesmerizing, the best at her job. But to this day, when I'm with her, it's not like I'm looking at an icon or a megastar. It's just Cher. We grew up together from our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s now.
That's incredible. Okay, but tell me about that first day. What did you guys do? Where did you go? Where do you go shopping?
What she wanted
to
know is this. She said, is there anywhere hip to shop in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, so she's asking
everybody know. Well, yeah, because that was our only path. When you're on tour, there's not much you can do. So what do girls like to do? Like, occasionally in Vegas, we'd go to a spa and do that. But other than that, you go shopping wherever you are. It's just a bonding thing, and we both loved it. We both still to this day love it and still get excited about clothes. But when she said, is there any place hip to go shopping? I knew what she meant. So I said, yeah, Georgetown is an area that has a lot of really cool boutiques. So I'll come to your hotel. She said, I'll get everybody at limousines and not, SUVs.
Yeah.
And I'll come to your hotel. And she said, I'll get the car and we'll go to Georgetown. So that's what we did. And I just remember thinking, this is really cool. I have a new friend and I like this feeling. And I like that we're shopping and she's glamorous and so different than being in a bikini stoned on the North Shore. You know what I mean?
So with this friendship, is this kind of like the beginning of your entrepreneurial spirit too? No, not yet, because what happened, now that her memoir is out, I can talk about it. I met her in June of 72, and by October of 72, what's that, July, August, September, 4 months, she left Sonny one night in Las Vegas, which she chronicles in her memoir, how it went down. It was shocking. Nobody knew about it. She had the hit TV show. They were singing, I Got You, Babe, and I Love You, and this and that. And the reality is she was miserable. She didn't tell me she was miserable until after she did this grand thing. One night they were performing in Las Vegas, and I was with her. And she left him, and she tells the story in the book. She left him and went off with the guitar player in the band. And I was trying to help them. I was with the tour manager. We drove them to the airport so they could leave for San Francisco. So there's this big story that happened over 50 years ago that I've been keeping to myself
And all of a sudden she wrote it in her book. And so now it feels odd to talk about it. But she grew up with me as a influence on her because I'd been out on my own for so long. Like she'd never smoked pot and she'd never like gone on a trip, a girls' trip. She'd never been with girls just going out to a dinner. So one of the first things we did, we went to Europe. She, her sister Georgianne, and I went to Europe for a month. We went to Paris, to Amsterdam. That was my idea. And London, I said, you can't just go to Paris. Everybody knows you're a big star and it's a big hoopla. We have to go somewhere where nobody knows who you are. And we're not going to stay in a luxury hotel. We're just going to go to a regular hotel. And we ended up in a hash bar because it was legal there in Amsterdam. And we met these American guys that were in a Volkswagen van traveling through Europe. And now I've got Cher and her sister and I. Stuff like this would never have happened with Sonny because he was dictatorial and, he was controlling about where she went and what she did. And she didn't have any girlfriends. She just stayed at home or she worked. Like, if it wasn't work, they weren't doing it. So when she'd say, why can't we go on vacation to Europe? He said, there's no money to be made there. Or why can't we play tennis and ski? No. And, so meeting me meant I can do whatever the hell I want. And we started skiing and we started taking all these trips together. And some of the pictures that I've shown you from our trip to Hawaii, her first trip to Hawaii, just girls going to Hawaii. And going to Europe for a month was like so fun for her. She'd never done it. I'd done it. Those are the kinds of examples of what I had done. Here she is, this big, huge, successful star, and she'd never done something that simple. That's, where I influenced her. So, we were bonded right away, and she trusted me. And so they made a guise of me being now Cher's assistant. And because I wasn't their assistant, when I moved to California, I worked at Fred Siegel's, a clothing store there, and I continued to go out with their tour manager. And he lived in Malibu, so I lived with him. So the night that she left Sonny, everything changed because they had an assistant. Now that assistant was gone. Sonny, of course, started dating somebody right away. He couldn't be alone for a second. And they pretended that his girlfriend at the time, Connie, was his assistant, and I was Cher's assistant.
Wait, who's they? Who's pretending?
Sonny and Cher, because she left him in October, but they had this hit TV show and a contract. They had to pretend to still be together. They're holding their child and singing I Got You, Babe, to each other. And it was going on. It was a contract. So they had to pretend for a long time that they were still a couple, even though they were separated. And they stayed in the same beautiful mansion in Holmby Hills. Sonny was on one end of the floor with his girlfriend. Cher was on the other end. I moved in at one point, and Cher and I would travel and do stuff, and Sonny had his own life, and it would be a full year before anybody knew what happened.
But for someone who was so controlling of her for that period of time that they were together, was that cordial?
He hated it, but the truth is that she was the big star. And when she left him and the show ended, it had to be a lawsuit. He didn't give her her money. This is all in her memoir. He blocked her being able to have a show, and it took a while contractually and he had his show and it was a flop. Then she got the Cher show and it was a successful show. Then they became amicable. A couple years later, 1976, they got back together for the Divorce Sonny and Cher show. And then I got married and moved to Florida, but I still saw her all the time. We went on trips. That was short-lived. And then she started her film career in the 80s. That's when the whole Sunny thing was behind her, and now she was a bona fide actress. She started out with a Robert Altman play, and she went on to do a lot of successful films, won an Academy Award, and then I had been married. She married somebody else in the Allman Brothers band. My ex-husband is in the Allman. So we married guys in the same band, and we had kids.
At the same time?
Yeah. She was married to Gregory first, and I met Dickie, my husband, through Greg and Cher 3 months after they got married. So I started dating Dickie, and we were both on tour with our boyfriends, touring around. It was her husband by then, I guess. And then our sons are 2 years apart. So
was that fun that you're getting to kind of double date?
yeah,
and spend...
only it got very complicated because rock and roll band dynamics are highly charged anyway. There's always a lot of drama within the band and who's getting attention and this and that and the other. And so when Greg was with Cher, he was not in Macon, Georgia with the rest of the band. He moved to California to be with Cher. They were breaking up. They were get back together. And he stopped being one of the guys in Georgia where the rest of the band was available to record and all that. They'd have to fly the tracks over here to, for him to sing over them. And there was resentment with that. And then there was a lot of stuff that went on legally with their band, with some former tour manager who got indicted for drugs, and her husband testified again. So do you know what I mean? It was like, because we were both with these guys in the same band, there was drama and dynamics. And so I married my guy in the band, Dickie, and we moved to Florida. But then I would come out here and see Cher and all the time see her. And then we started going to Saint-Tropez every summer, and I'd go to movie sets. And I did not move back to Malibu from Florida until way after my divorce. And I had a clothing company in the meantime and stuff. But in 1990, I moved back to her house, and then I did all the infomercials with her for hair infomercials, and I styled her exercise videos and the band and all that. And I met my husband I'm married to now when he played in her band.
Your lives are so intertwined. So at the time when you're marrying guys in the same band, is that causing tension between your friendship?
It had to, yeah, because the guys were feuding, and then you take the side of who you're with. So we went through a period where we didn't speak to each other. And also she felt abandoned by me because she was pregnant with Elijah, and her husband, we both married addicts. Let's start there. But her addict was an alcoholic and a heroin addict. Mine did a lot of cocaine, so they did totally different drugs, but we were both trying to make it work with them. For some unknown reason, we thought we could change them. We could make them sober and be the people that they were great. Like, I have nothing but love and admiration for Dickie, and I have great memories of Gregory too, but on drugs, you weren't getting real people. So there was a lot of drama, and she felt abandoned by me. So we didn't speak to each other for about a year and a half. And then when my son was born, she sent a gargantuan thing of gardenias floating in a huge bowl, bigger than the coffee table. And then I came out here, and I was with her for her birthday. And, it made... It all goes back together again, because when you have true friendship, it's like no time has gone by. You can just pick up, when...
So when you're not talking for a year and a half, was there a falling out, or you just are so caught up in your lives?
No. It's not like that. It's just unspoken. And also, I'm just going to say that it feels probably like abandonment to her, because I'm getting married and moving away, but it's my life. And that's kind of what I do. I got married, and I moved to Florida where he lived. And so from 1976, then I got married 77. I had my son in 78. And then she sent the flowers then. And then we started seeing each other a lot in the 80s. I was seeing her. She was coming to Florida, to Sarasota. And then in 84, I divorced my husband, and I started a clothing company that just designed women's clothing, shirts and cool tops, and we were just selling them. And I happened to know, this is so convoluted. This is my life, though. I knew the tour accountant for Bon Jovi because he had been the tour accountant for the Allman Brothers. And I'd sent a box of shirts to her to give to all the Bon Jovi wives, thinking that'll be cool. The wives will wear the shirts and it'll get out there. And what happened was instead, John Bon Jovi saw one of the shirts for his wife, Dorothea, and he loved it, and he wore it on the MTV Music Awards in 1987 or 86. I think it was 87. He wore it on the MTV Music Awards, and he opened the show singing Living on a Prayer, flying in over the audience at the MTV Music Awards. And my partner, Laura, and I were just screaming, sitting at home, because everybody watched MTV then. It was like a thing, like you were glued to the TV for anything MTV. And we were screaming that he's wearing our shirt. So then the guy that did the tour merchandise for Bon Jovi complimented him. He goes, "That's cool. What are you wearing? What is that?" And he said, "Oh, do you know who Dickie Betts is from the Allman Brothers Band? His ex-wife has a clothing company and sent my wife a bunch of shirts." So I took it. And he goes, "Oh." So he called me. And he goes, "What are you and your partner doing? What kind of stuff?" And I go, "Well, it's women's clothing." He said, "Well, would you be interested if I hired you, both of you?" Our company was called Majorly Cool. In fact, Cher named it Majorly Cool because it's something she said all the time in the 80s. And this is like mid-80s. And he said, "Would you be interested in designing for us? It would mean you'd have to travel with all the rock bands and do all," and we, yeah, but she and I both had kids to support because we were both divorced. She was married to a football player, my partner. And so now all of a sudden we didn't have to manufacture. We didn't have to ship. We didn't have to go to all the trade shows and sell. We didn't have to do any of that. All we had to do was design, come up with ideas, and he'd manufacture it and have it made and shipped and sold. And it was a dream job. So in the 80s, we toured with Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, In Excess. We did Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We did a whole line of clothing for a show that was supposed to be called Beverly Hills High School, ended up being called 90210. So we did so much stuff in the 80s doing all that. So I'd see Cher a lot because we had meetings at 20th Century Fox once a month for those years. And I'd come to her house and visit and stay and whatever. And we'd go to Fox for the meetings because they had the license for Beverly Hills High School. So we had meetings about that. And we actually, it's crazy that they changed the name of the show and they delayed it by a year, but we still did a line of clothing and debuted it at Beverly Hills High School. And it was like on the evening news because it was a high school that sold the rights to the name Beverly Hills High School for income for their school with this merchandise. So it was crazy.
So when did you come up with the idea for this business, and what was the first step that you took?
Well, my friend Laura, we were both divorced in 84. She was with the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I was married to Dickie, who was in a very successful band at the time. And we both needed to come up with something. And So we said, let's do a clothing line. And back then in the 80s, everything was like opulent and, cut out shoulders hanging off and studded and rhinestones and everything was, and tied at the waist, think Madonna or, So we had a line of women's clothing that we put our money into, that we did every single piece of it. We went and we sold at all the trade shows in New York, Miami, wherever. We just traveled and we manufactured them, we shipped them, and we were in department stores. And we were kind of like big fish in a small pond. We lived in Sarasota, Florida. Everybody kind of knew us to be married to these guys. I mean, it would be nothing in LA, but in Sarasota, Florida, it was a big deal. So we'd they do articles on our clothing and stuff. And then when we got bought out by this large entertainment merchandising company to do legit things with, that became huge news. And so, and Laura is artistic and really, and we're both super tall and we both had really wild curly 80s hair. I was a brunette and she was a blonde. And so our logo and everything was all curly and kind of wild, but yeah, no, it was great because that was the time. And like, I went to Hawaii for Bon Jovi and we did the first shirt for them was, the chakra, the Hawaii thing. And it was for it's called an event shirt when you have a certain concert and you do a special shirt just for that, like if you're at Madison Square Garden or the Rose Bowl, there'll be a special, thing to commemorate that. But so we did that, and Cher was super supportive and came to our shows and stuff. And it was kind of cool to have her come and support us,
Meanwhile, what is the dynamic in your friendship like? She was famous from such a young age. That has to affect you because there's so much pressure. Everything's about you. So many paychecks are reliant on you and your success. So you kind of have to be self-centered whether you want to or not. How does that work in your dynamic?
We're complete opposites. We are so opposite in that she's a really interesting combination to me. She's super strong and she can cut. She has a moon in Capricorn. I'm sorry, I'm into astrology. So your moon is your emotions and Capricorn is an earth sign. It's the sign of the father. And she can tune out emotion with business and compartmentalize. And yet she's really soft inside. Like I always think of her because this is the way it started. I was 4 years younger. She was the big star. I was just this chick that was kind of doing life and kind of wild. But I always felt kind of protective of her. And like I was like, not like the bigger sister, but like going, you want to take care of her. She has a vulnerability. The thing that makes her such a great actress, too, is she shows her vulnerability. Even though she is like, she cannot do anything wrong in her business decisions with her career. She will go from TV star to a great performer on stage to an Academy Award-winning actress to an Emmy to, whatever she does in her career doing that stuff, she just can't fail. She's just in the creative arts. She's just got something so special that has made her an icon because she became famous. She met Sonny when she was 16. And from that first hit when she was 19, it's been go, 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 go. And she's 79. That's 60 years of kicking ass.
Incredible. Yeah.
And I have never cared. I never wanted to be, I would hate it. Like, she can't walk anywhere, have a meal without people in her, but it's part of her job. And she just takes it in stride to be, to have fans come up to her and all that. And it does change her life to the point that she doesn't just go out and she can't. I will never forget, we were riding our bicycles. We were in Miami on tour in the 70s. This is back when she was still with Sonny, pretending they were fine. And we were on tour in Miami, and we were both in bikinis, and we had our hair. She had hers in a bun. I was in a ponytail, sunglasses. We're riding our bikes from our hotel, just going for a bike ride, thinking nobody will recognize her. People were honking horns going, "Hey, Cher, Cher." And to this day, we laugh about how did they recognize her in a bathing suit with no makeup on, no hair flowing, no anything that said Cher.
Okay, I don't know what either of you were thinking because you both are such stunners too. You're just so striking. So even if they didn't recognize her as Cher, I mean, you two stand out.
Well, we probably stood out. I mean, that happened through all our trips to Saint-Tropez. Like, we have a friend, Joey, who's Lebanese, and Cher and I are Armenian. And this one guy, he was drunk. We were in Saint-Tropez at a club called Cinq on Cinq. And this guy goes, "Is there something with tall, exotic Armenian women going on that I missed here?" And we were just bosom buddies, And those are great memories. And that's when she got to relax and be her, because in Europe, there was no Sonny and Cher show. So there was a huge gap between the 60s when she had a hit song, even in Europe, and her film career in the 80s all of a sudden blew the lid off of her anonymity. But we could walk around in Europe and people wouldn't recognize her.
So you initially bond on being Armenian. And then how much of your being Armenian plays into the friendship in the beginning? Are you talking about it? Are you discussing your family histories?
I'm telling her a lot because her father was Armenian. She did not grow up with him. She had the fondest memories of her extended family, but not of her father, because her father, long story, she talks about it, but he had an accident and got on pain medication, became a drug addict. And so although he was in her life for a brief period, he abandoned her. She didn't meet him again till she was 11 or something. She never had that thing with him to get the Armenian, but she loved the food. She loved his family, and Aunt Roxy, his sister, and her grandmother, she had great memories of growing up because he was from Fresno, where there were a lot of Armenians. And she had great memories, but they were very limited. And I told her my story about my grandmother being taken into captivity. And,
Well, tell us about that. That was...
Right now? Right now in the middle of Cher?
Well, now that you mentioned it, I guess it's only appropriate. Because I have to say, when you first told me about your grandmother's story, I thought it was one of the most beautiful, romantic, yet tragic stories I've ever heard in my life.
And I am so grateful that I got to hear this story because there was so much shame involved in this. So all of us that are Armenian share the same history of having relatives that were in the genocide of 1915 in the Ottoman Empire. And it was a systematic extinction. They were trying to kill off all the Christian Armenians, and it's been documented that 1.5 million Armenians were killed. The Turkish government to this day will say, "Oh, no, it was part of World War I." It was not. Because it's still going on with Azerbaijan and the Turks giving them aid for killing Armenians for some unknown reason. The most peaceful people don't have armies and all of that. But yeah. So what happened was my grandmother, that's how old I am. My grandmother was born in 1903. So she was 12 when the genocide happened. And her family, her grandfather, her father, and her 4 uncles. So Her grandfather had 5 sons, and the grandfather has started silk mill business. And when he had his sons, they each had a different job. One was in charge of all the dyeing, and he went to Africa to find out how to make the different dye colors and all of that. One went to find out about the looms to make the silk, and that was he learned in the south of France where they were doing the most with all of that. And then one was with marketing, and it grew into a business that had 250 employees in a town in what was Western Armenia or Ottoman Turkey, Western, called Karpet. It's also named Harput, and I noticed that Joe Manganiello was a guest on your show, and when he said that his great-grandmother, who he had a similar horrible story about his great-grandmother and what she went through losing her 8 children, that he said were from Harput. And I thought, could that be the same? And I Googled it before I came here just to see. And sure enough, Karpet, that I was told, always from my grandmother she was from, is also called Harput. And that's where Joe Manganiello's great-grandmother was from. So, similarly to his story, it was a fateful night. They said they came to the house, and also you'd have to see those pictures. Since the 5 brothers owned this business, there were 5 homes side by side, and they owned an enclave. And they had all the silk mills and the business separate but next door. And the authorities came and said there was a town's meeting and all the men had to leave. And they took all the males, even the young ones. They quickly took the baby, who was my grandmother's little brother. She was 12. It was her little brother. Dressed him as a girl. He was the only male saved. They took all the men. They never saw him again. And then they banished the women and children, took over all the homes and all the business and everything. Banished them to the streets. So they're wandering around. They're trying to find safety. And my grandmother's mother, she was young, but she was coming of age, and she was pretty, and she was worried that she was going to be raped by the soldiers. So my grandmother told me she took walnut juice to disfigure her face to make her seem like she had leprosy, so they'd leave her alone and try to hide her. So, sure enough, it happened. One day she was just taken off the streets. And this is in this region, and everything is very difficult. There's no food, there's no water, they have no home. And so they're going from place to place, sleeping under trees. And these soldiers took her away, and she was put in this Turkish general's harem and made his concubine. He had 2 wives, and they had children. And here she was, 12 years old. And God bless her. I will never forget my grandmother said this. She said, but Paulette, he wasn't cruel to me. He was the only one that was nice to me there. And I thought, how convoluted is that? But that's how she survived that. The other 2 wives hated her. And this is the story of how my grandfather found her. So she goes on living here for a while, and every day the 2 women would take their children for a walk in the woods next door to their home. And there was a creek that ran alongside it into the woods, and they just walk. And she went with them, and they talked down to her and treated her, like badly, because they're terrified that she was going to have a baby next. And he seemed to prefer her. He was spending more time with her than with them. They were jealous of her because she was this young, beautiful girl, and she didn't have children yet, and they were worried for their position in the family. So unbeknownst to anybody, my grandfather, the man who became my grandfather, was 15 years old. He was in the French army, but of Armenian descent. And he had heard, because my grandmother's family was so illustrious, they'd won awards at the 1893 World's Fair for their silks, and they had won. They're in every Armenian textbook. If you go into a textbook, and I have two of them at home in the Karpat region, it will talk about the Fabrikatorian family. The Sultan of the Ottoman Empire named the family Fabrikatorian, which means fabric makers. And he had heard that Pegrui, that was my grandmother's name, Fabrikatorian, was being held captive. And he, with the zest and vigor of a 15-year-old boy, sought out to rescue her. So in the underground church, in all the talking, he found out where to find her. And he hid in the woods, and he saw the women come, and he had heard from, there was an underground network to find out what was going on, and he was safe because he was in the French army, but he had made this trip to make it his ambition to help her. And so he hid in the woods, and the women came, and they were, stand over there, and the way they talked to her, he watched it for one day, and then the next day when he came, he spent the night in the woods that night. The next day they came again, and he made his presence known. He just jumped out. He said, listen, I have a proposition for you. Why don't you tell your husband that marauding intruders came and stole her away? You don't want her. I can tell you don't like her. You don't want her here. And I'll take her away, and you won't ever have to think about her again. And my grandmother, who was 13, by now she's had her birthday, she's 13 years old, doesn't know him. She's been put in this harem and lived a life of terror for over a year now, not knowing what would become of her. And now this boy is taking her away. And they fled, and they went towards the coast, but they had to travel all through the Ottoman Empire. And she got pregnant on the way. And my mother was born of their relationship in Adana in Turkey, on the coast near Syria. And what their plan was to go south to Cairo, to where a lot of Armenians had fled to flee the genocide. So they went through Syria, and they went to Cairo, and they were just these teenage kids who now have a baby.
12 and 15?
They were 13 and 15 when they met. By the time she got pregnant and my mother was born, she was 16.
My God.
Because it takes a while to travel those distances. You're on foot. Nobody's got money for a train, and you're having to avoid getting caught and everything else. So they came to Cairo and found the relatives, my mother's relatives, and they were told that there was a town in Khartoum, Sudan, just south of Egypt is the country of Khartoum, and Sudan, and the capital is Khartoum, and it was a British protectorate, and it was like out of Africa at the time, not like where Osama bin Laden was finally found, and that whole thing happened. But, I mean, that's where my mother was raised, in Khartoum, Sudan. She went to English school. She went to Episcopalian church. She volunteered for the British Red Cross during, her coming up. She was born at a time when, she would go to parties in Cairo, and she finally met my father there after World War II. And when she was in her 20s, she had gone to visit her cousins in Cairo. And She walked out on the terrace at Shepherd's Hotel in Cairo, and my father was there with a couple other people that guys that were also in the OSS, and they were plain clothes at the time. The United States was keeping them there to stabilize the region. After World War II, they blended in with the society, spoke all the languages. My father spoke Arabic and Turkish and all those languages that mattered, and he spoke with English with an accent. He was Armenian, so he was sitting on the terrace, and my mother walked across, and he said, "See that woman? I would never, ever approach a woman like that. She knows she's beautiful. She knows we're all looking at her. I have no interest in ever being with a woman like that." And they all listened to him and whatever. And then she had a drink with her, whoever she was with, and she left. She walked back across the terrace and left. And he said goodbye to his friends and went to a dinner party at some Armenian friends that he had met at their home. And of course, you know the rest of the story. My mother walked in the dinner party. They were seated next to each other. And he had only 3 weeks before he had to be back in Washington to be a founding member of the CIA. And he asked her to marry him. Within 3 weeks, they were married. And she came to the United States as a GI bride, and I was born after that.
Wow. Okay. I don't even know which part to go back to, because at first I want to go back to your grandmother. I want to ask about your grandmother's, when your grandmother is sharing these stories with you. And I mean, not a lot of people can say that their grandmother actually told them everything that happened.
Usually it's removed. Like Joe Manganiello, I was listening to him talk about his great-grandmother, and I went, wow, I don't even know anything about my great-grandmother. You know? I thought how great that he knows that, but I got the story from my grandmother, you know?
Well, and Joe Manganiello talked about the generational trauma, too. Is that something that you experienced since your grandmother actually told you firsthand about what happened to her?
You know, I have that sadness that for my people, every time I hear what happened in Artsakh, what is happening, continues to happen, it just baffles me that so many people get attention for, you know, everybody's focused over here on what's going on with Israel and, you know, the Palestinians and this and that. And there are so many other atrocities. And I'm not just even saying Armenia and the Turks and the Azerbaijans. I'm talking about even Ukraine being devastated by Russia. There's so much injustice, but certain things garner all the attention. And I'm sad for my people that it continues. It continues and it continues. And because the way Daddy explained it to me, it was because of the United States' alliance with NATO, and Turkey was an integral part of it, and we had an Air Force base in Turkey that they had to keep relations. So it was never said publicly, this is a genocide, and we recognize it as such. You know, the story goes that Hitler said, who will care about the Jews? Nobody cared about the Armenians, because this was the first genocide of the century. In 1915, way before what happened with the Nazis. So
now tell me about your dad, because this is a fascinating story on its own. How does he become one of the founding members of the CIA?
I can't really answer that because I didn't even know what he did till I was 18, and that was an accident.
So what was your childhood
My father
like?
always had cover jobs. And back then, you'll find this interesting, and I have everyone. The passports, United States passports, on the inside cover used to say occupation, and it was all handwritten in. Everything was handwritten in. On the inside cover, I have all his old passports, and every single one, it's like so obvious to me. It says importer, exporter. When I was in Greece, he was writing a book on travel in Greece and Yugoslavia, supposedly. That was his cover job. He was with Olson's travel agency out of Chicago writing a book on tourism in Athens and Yugoslavia, which is when we lived in Athens when I was 12, 13, 14, 15. No, he was flying in and out of Syria, taking passports, recruiting spies, and doing all of his work. God knows what it was. I had no idea. I had no idea in high school. Nobody knows but your spouse until a certain point. When I was 18, I went down in the basement to his office to get like paper clips or something. I don't even remember what it was, but he had a part of his desk that had a lock on it and it was open. And I thought, well, maybe they're in here. And I looked and there was literally a dossier that was stamped top secret all over it. And I went, what the hell? And it was about a missile base, how high the fence was, where the guards were when the lights turned on. And I'm reading through it, and I decided he was a Russian spy. And I go charging up the stairs, and I go, I know what you do. And he went, what? And I said, I know what you do. I just saw the top secret folder in your desk. You're a Russian spy. And that's when he sat me down and told me.
So why did you think specifically Russian spy?
Because
of all
it was
things?
about a Russian missile base, and it didn't occur to me CIA. I don't know. I don't know.
So
but
then,
I don't know how he became that other than, in the genesis of the CIA, when it was formed, they didn't want military types. They didn't want the generals. They didn't want police types. They wanted men and women that could blend into society and not stand out, and could move in and out, knew the language, knew the terrain, knew the culture of these different areas that they were sensitive, that needed spying on, and that could speak the languages, and that showed grace under pressure. That was the thing. They wanted people that showed grace under pressure. I always remembered that because that's Daddy.
So then looking back, once you actually found out that he works for the CIA, are there moments from your childhood that didn't make sense that suddenly you're like, oh, duh?
1,000%. My favorite story is this. Did I tell you this when we met?
What?
About the umbrella?
No.
So I was 13 and we were living in Athens, Greece. And all I wanted to do was be American and have blonde hair and blue eyes and fit in. And I had these weird parents that insisted we live in Athens when all the Americans that I went to the American school with lived in a suburb. The American club was in Kifisia. My school was in Halandri. And all the suburbs are where the Americans, there used to be an Air Force base in Athens. It's no longer there. But mind you, my dad's supposedly working for a travel agency. So we didn't have PX privileges. PX is where you go shopping when you work for the government they sell American food goods and things like Keds sneakers and American things. Mm-hmm. And it's for all the servicemen and their families and all that. So I'm going to the American school. But my parents insist on living in Athens, like the biggest blessing in the world now with this brain, thinking I woke up every morning literally looking at the Acropolis out the window because we were in a penthouse apartment. But I wanted to live in the suburbs with my friends by the American club in Kifisia and have a yard and, just be normal. But so my dad, one night, I was 13, he's looking everywhere for an umbrella. And I'm like, my father's so friggin' weird. And I thought, what is he doing? Looking for an umbrella. It's perfectly good weather. And I go, he's just weird. I remember just thinking how weird he was. And so later, when I would talk to him, I said, okay, I remember thinking you were really doing strange things. He said, like what? I said, well, this stands out. For some reason, this is the best example. You were looking everywhere for an umbrella. He said, politique, you would have a script. The only way you knew who you were meeting in a clandestine meeting would be, I'm going to have an umbrella. I'm going to be standing on the corner, and you're going to walk up to me and you're going to say, the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain. And I'm going to say XYZ back, and we're going to have this conversation to make sure we are who we say we are before we exchange the information that we need to exchange. And that's how he explained it to me. So those are the things that happened. I thought he was so weird doing, like making himself crazy. Where's the umbrella? Where's the umbrella?
I'm never going to look at an umbrella the same again after this story. Wow. Oh my God. Okay, so we jumped into this topic because we were talking about
And also, I don't think there are any accidents. I don't think it's by chance that I met Cher. I feel like in your lifetime, somehow, like I always knew that I was going to land on my feet. I never thought, I was in trouble by all these crazy ideas I had. And my father later told me, I never worried about you for a minute because I knew you would end up in any country in the world and you'd figure it out and you'd meet friends and you'd have food. And because I had kind of street smarts about that. But like, I really feel like the timing was perfect. I mean, who decides on a whim, like all of a sudden, okay, I'm done. I'm going to switch this chapter off in my life. I don't want to be on a beach in a bikini for another minute. I want to go be vital. I want to be part of society. I want this and that. And I want to work in fashion, but I don't want to be in Washington. It's so boring and it's so stagnant. I want to be somewhere fun. Like I literally visualized what I wanted. I wanted to be in the sun like all these beach places I'd been. I want to be somewhere where there's a beach and I want to be near a lot of action and maybe celebrity, but I don't want to be that, but I want to be somewhere near all that. And the day I came back home to DC from Hawaii, I met Sonny and Cher. Well, I met Cher. I didn't meet Sonny until a couple days later when she had to ask him if I could come on tour. No girls were allowed. No girlfriends were allowed to just hop on the plane.
But he was okay with you.
He made it okay because Jerry, the tour manager, liked me and told him that he thought that he wanted to live with me.
Keep an eye on you.
Yeah. Little did he know that I was going to be, the bane of his existence by telling Cher stories about all these crazy antics that I'd lived.
Why do you think she trusted you so quickly? Because that's a fast-moving friendship.
Honestly, I think, like we've talked about it, she said there was something about you coming into my life at the exact moment I really needed a friend. And then you saying you're Armenian, I thought it's meant to be. It's something like, sort of like there are no accidents, that you're meant to meet the people you're meant to meet.
Caviar isn't just a restaurant, it's an experience. Imagine fine dining where you also have omakase, hand roll classes, and fire showgirls. It's also the ideal spot for private parties and corporate events. Make sure to check out caviarrestaurants.com.
I didn't know she was Armenian. She didn't know she had no Armenian friends, and either did I. To be honest with you, my parents never made me go to Armenian schools, and I went to regular church. I didn't go to Armenian Orthodox, and I knew their friends, but I didn't. My parents never went, oh, you have to date. My mother tried. Like when I went to Europe the year before I met Cher, she gave me a list of all
Armenian guys to date.
Armenian relatives in London that had sons that were the right age. And, and I tried it and I was like, I just have to be me,
Yeah. Okay, so then you initially bond on being Armenian, and that's how we kind of went into the family stories and everything. So you bond about being Armenian. You're sharing your grandmother's stories with her?
Yeah. I'm sharing my grandmother's story. We're talking about food because my grandmother was still alive then, and she had relatives in LA, and she would come and she made lahmacun.
Yum.
And Cher and I loved lahmacun.
Yeah.
And that was my favorite. And she would make, I don't know if this is Armenian. Do you know what plaki is?
I don't
Bean
know.
plaki. It's white beans with chopped up carrots, celery, tomato, and it's kind of, you can eat it hot or cold.
Is it wrapped in cabbage?
No, it's not wrapped. It's just a side dish.
Oh, I don't know.
My grandmother came, and when she was staying with her relatives, she would make, her lahmacun or her whatever, and that is like, I bring it home to share, and she loved it. So, and
Did you ever meet your grandmother?
She didn't meet my grandmother. She knew my parents really well.
Yeah.
And my mom came out several times. My dad came and stayed at her house, and she loved my dad. She really loved my dad. And my parents adored her. But so I told her all the stories of my upbringing, and she thought the story of my grandmother was like a movie. She said, that should be a movie. And I wish it had been the movie about Armenians. I'm blanking on the name of the movie that came out.
The Promise?
Thank you. Yeah. It needed to be a little more poignant, But because there have not been any movies made about what happened there, and there have been a myriad of movies made about what happened in Nazi Germany, Like, I just wish one film would depict it.
Maybe film producer is your next step in entrepreneurship.
I don't know. But, yeah, no, she was happy to know that. And also, I met in later years, as a matter of fact, back in 2016, 17, when Cher went back to Vegas, I was on tour with her from 2014 till the pandemic shut down touring in 2020. But I was on tour with her for that whole 6 years. And her aunt lived in Las Vegas, and I loved meeting them. I loved meeting her Armenian relatives because also Cher's Turkish Armenian like I am. Ottoman Armenian.
This episode is sponsored by Voskevaz Winery in Armenia. This family-run wine castle is known for its unique architecture and award-winning wines. Planning a tasting, tour, or special event, call 374-9955-0970.
So tell me about how you and Cher end up going to Armenia together.
Well, my father died December 13th, 92. 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. And I found out New Year's Eve of 92 into 93. Then I went to my father's karasunk, which for Armenians is 40 days after your loved one dies. You have a ceremony for them, and you honor them, and you talk about them. And when I went back to Washington, D.C., where my parents are from, to be at the karasunk for my father with all of his old friends, I learned about what was going on in Armenia after the earthquake, after the fall of communism. There was no food, there was no electricity in Yerevan, and I heard all about how bad the things were. I'm pregnant. I found out I was pregnant. So now it's really meaningful. Now it's a full circle moment. My dad died in my arms December 13th. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks later. And now I'm sitting there hearing about what's going on in Armenia. So I went back, and all I did was tell Cher what I had heard. And then she just went into Cher overdrive. And she said, well, I'm going to do something about it, and got in touch with Kirk Kerkorian, and who was sending aid to Yerevan and to Armenia and helping them as much as he could. And Cher said, well, we have to educate people. They don't know where Armenia is. They don't know anything about it, and they don't understand. So essentially, he put together a whole brigade of people and journalists, People magazine, the 2020, the magazine show on TV, 2020, a whole crew, and all kinds of journalists. And we all went to London. I'm pregnant. By then, I'm like 5-6 months pregnant. And he was going to fly the supplies to Armenia, to Yerevan. And we were going to visit and meet with the president. And we went to Ichmiadzin. And I couldn't go to the orphanage because I was pregnant. They had to get shots to be able to go because there was a lot. And I'm telling you, Sona, it was the most heart-wrenching thing I've ever seen. We're in a hotel that had been a viable hotel with room service and an elevator and all that. All of a sudden, there's no lights. There's no elevator running because there's no electricity. There's no restaurant there. No food. Everybody tells us to get meat, you have to buy it on the black market. Nobody had anything. And no running water. I have a picture of Cher trying to brush her teeth with a bottle of water in the sink. And we were freezing cold. It was April, but it was freezing there. And they had chopped down all the trees in the parks for warmth to burn the trees. So it was a rough time, and she did everything she could. She met with the president, and she did this whole 2020 thing and a People magazine cover story and brought people up to speed with what was going on there to try and raise more money. And now Yerevan's thriving, and of course the Kardashians have been there, and now people know what Armenian is, maybe because of them. But we went there in 1993, April 1993, and it was really a meaningful experience, having just lost my parents and doing it in their honor and thinking about the car sunk when all the elders were talking about how bad the conditions were. And then Cher had the idea to go there and to be the face for raising money for all the suffering there. Brought all kinds of supplies.
Admirable. And it's so amazing that even though you didn't really grow up feeling so Armenian and being surrounded by it so much, that you still felt that need innately to be proactive and to do something.
It's not that I didn't feel Armenian. I was Armenian. My parents were Armenian. I loved my parents. But I didn't go to Armenian schools and things that you probably did.
I didn't either.
Oh,
No.
you didn't?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
I didn't go to Armenian schools, and I didn't hang out. My parents didn't have that community. They had all kinds of friends.
Did they have a lot of Armenian friends, though?
They
or not?
had Armenian friends. Yes, they had very dear Armenian friends, but Daddy's CIA, what I later learned were CIA friends who were also, they're all different nationalities and Russian and this and that. They were like eclectic people, that came to the house, probably because of his job, people he met through work. So it wasn't singularly Armenian. We didn't live in like a Glendale community or, I'm from Washington, D.C. area. And it just... So I knew I was Armenian, but I didn't have the gravitas and the poignancy that it did later in life. Certainly when you have your own children and you realize where you come from and how finite your time on earth is and what matters the most, and just your heritage is so important all of a sudden, I think, to you when you become older in the later stages. Like, that's why I'm amazed that you're really into it and listening to all the old stories, because I think I asked you when we went to lunch that time, I heard that your generation didn't really care about the genocide so much anymore, and I can't remember what you said.
No, I think they do. I definitely came to feeling much more Armenian. The reason that I ask about feeling Armenian, I just remember it was a book that I read about ethnicities when I was in UCLA. And it was about, like understanding your heritage, but also like having a connection to it and really actually feeling like you are Armenian. For me, that feeling didn't come until I was in my 20s, really.
That's what I'm saying it did for me.
Yeah.
When I met Cher, it all clicked.
Yeah.
This is a full circle moment.
Yeah.
I wanted to be anything but. It started out that I was the tall one with curly hair that had parents that had accents, and I was embarrassed somehow about that. I remember thinking when we came back to the United States, I'm an American girl, I'm only going to speak English, and I did that. And how lame that is, and having to relearn French, and having this feeling of, okay, well, I love the things that I didn't like the most, being tall and having curly, thick hair, are the things I ended up loving the most about myself,
funny? Yeah.
And so then it was a full circle. When I met Cher, I went, oh, okay.
At that time, is she embracing her uniqueness as well? Or is she, because she never looked like she was trying to blend in with anyone. She looked exotic and she looked
did. And
confident.
Well, she has said this a million times. Her mother was blonde and green-eyed, and her sister was blonde and green-eyed.
Yeah.
She and her sister have different fathers. Cher took on her father's ethnicity, his Armenianness, but her sister looked just like the mom. So she felt like the black sheep in the family because her mom and sister, her mom's a beautiful, she was an actress and she was, beautiful in that American blonde way. So she came up thinking that she was different and that they were pretty and she wasn't the pretty one. But then when she came into it with a vengeance and embraced her uniqueness. And then Bob Mackie, her collaboration with Bob Mackie, who did all the costumes for her, and he met her before she was a TV star. She had met him before, so she had him do the costumes because she already loved everything he did because he dressed people like Mitzi Gaynor. I don't think you know who they are, but actresses that had come before. And she was familiar with his work. He had apprenticed under the woman that did Marlene Dietrich's famous nude gown. And so, they were a team. Bob and Cher are synonymous with this fashion that to this day people copy.
I love the photos of you and Cher at the Met Gala.
The first one?
Oh, my God.
I've been to 4 of them with her, but that one was the best.
Both of your looks were so iconic.
He did both of them.
Yeah, you both looked stunning. You must have been getting so many offers to do stuff at the time because you were just exceptionally stunning.
No. Also, there was no internet. There was no social media. There was no,
right.
Like, for instance, let me give you a for instance. I had a boyfriend before I married my first husband, and he was in a band called, they had their own TV show. They were called the Hudson Brothers. And Bill Hudson, the oldest one, is the father to Kate Hudson. Her mom's Goldie Hawn. Mm-hmm. So the Hudson brothers were kind of like the Jonas Brothers back then. They had their own TV show. They had their songs. They were like teeny bopper artists. Like the girls all went crazy for them. Mm-hmm. Like kind of like the Jonas Brothers started out and then they became whatever. So my boyfriend Mark was in the middle. And Cher's sister Georgianne Day, the youngest one, and Goldie Hawn married the oldest one. And I was dating Mark, and everything was so far behind and so late in finding out that I didn't find out he was cheating on me when he was doing summer stock theater in St. Louis doing a play they were doing The Wizard of Oz. He and his brothers were the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow. And he was having a fling with a dancer, and I didn't read about it. I didn't hear about it until I read it in Rona Barrett's magazine, Hollywood, 2 months later.
Oh, no.
And I was like at a 7-Eleven, I'd buy them and flip through them, and I went, and it said, Mark Hudson of the Hudson Brothers and Cher's, they always call me Cher's whatever friend, Paulette, are no longer an item because he's seeing Lori, whatever, a dancer in St. Louis, Missouri. And I was like, what? That's how I found it.
Oh, my God.
Nobody knew anything. Nobody asked me to be or do. The only thing I got asked to ever do was all the, like to tell the stories about what was going on that I guarded so secretively all these years until she just
wrote
spelled
about it
it in the
herself?
memoir.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
But that's just being a friend, like a good friend would never.
Of course. Of course.
I never had that aspiration to do anything. I had to be in
But
the
you were
hair.
modeling and you were so gorgeous.
I modeled back in before I met her. And then all the hair infomercials. I was on TV with her on every TV screen in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But I can talk. I love to talk. Can you tell?
Well, you're so social and you're always so positive. I'm just curious, at a certain point, like when you're, let's say, 22, 23, what is your world like when you are having this kind of eccentric life with Cher? Your dad's in the CIA, you're Armenian, but you're living this global lifestyle. I mean, there's just so much excitement all around you.
To be perfectly honest, I can't even be more honest. It was just kind of my life. I didn't think anything of it. As a matter of fact, I can remember Georgianne, Cher's sister, we would lay out by the pool. Sometimes if Cher was gone, like when she had a boyfriend like David Geffen for a minute or whatever, she'd be gone. We would lay out by the pool and I'd say, I wonder what's going on in Hollywood. There I am in this big mega mansion in Holmby Hills at the biggest star's house. And I was like, I know there are parties going on tonight, but I don't know where. Like, I feel like we're missing out. Like, I always have FOMO. Always. I still have FOMO. And, like, I never thought of my life as anything other than my life. And not until I got older. And really, I wrote my memoir for my boys to know about their Armenian heritage. I started writing about my grandmother's family so they'd have all the history of her family. And then I just kind of kept going. I started writing about when I was born and where I lived and what happened, living in Beirut and losing my brother there, and then living in Athens in high school, and then quitting college and da-da-da. And I just kept going. And then I went, I might as well keep writing about meeting Cher. And I kept writing about my first marriage. So I did my memoir. I just didn't publish it. And that's when I realized, and that was like, I'm going to say in like 2008, and I was already 58 years old, and I all of a sudden hit me. Oh my God, your life has been incredible. Like when I tell people all the different things, but I'd always I still do it. Like I was on tour with Cher. I called her in 2010, and I said, I'm ready to do this again. If you're whatever you're doing, let's hang out again. Because when you have kids, you go do I was a mommy, I was on the school board. I did that with him. Mm-hmm. So when he was starting high school, actually he was a sophomore, 2010, I reached out and I said, if you want to hang out. And she said, well, if you're going to hang out, you have to like hang out. That means coming over every day. I want you to come over and work out with me. I have to get ready. I'm going to go on tour soon. I'm going to do an album and blah, blah, blah. So we hung out for like a year or two. And then she did the new album. Then in 2014, she started the tour. And I just ended up going on tour 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. And the fans think, why aren't you with her every minute? And you can't explain. Because we're adults. We have our own lives. And she's not touring. I just went on tour. Like I wanted to revisit what that was like. And I don't need to do it again because I was just a friend going. It's one thing if you're working, but it's kind of boring to be on tour if you're not doing anything.
Were you working at any point
from
with her?
2014 till the pandemic, I wasn't. I just went with her because she said, I need support. It's really boring out on tour, which it is. It's so boring. If you're out on tour and you don't have like friends or support.
So with
you.
a decades-long friendship, if you feel like there are people kind of getting into her circle that are maybe not so good for her, or if you feel just protective over her that they might be taking advantage of her, do you feel free to tell her and be like, hey, as your friend, I don't like these people around you?
Wow, you went there. Certainly there have been people that she has been friends with in her lifetime. And I have never, ever, if she asked me, I would tell her.
So you won't volunteer?
No, I won't, because she certainly told me if she doesn't like somebody I've dated somebody after my first divorce. She came with her boyfriend, Josh, to Florida, and we all went out on a boat with my partner in the clothing company, her boyfriend, me, my boyfriend, Cher, her boyfriend. We were out on a boat in the Gulf of Mexico. And when she went home, she said, I don't like him at all. I see right through him, da-da-da. And so that was weird for a while, but I would never do that to her because it's her choice, like if anything she wants to do, I will support. If something's dangerous, I would say something.
Yeah.
If somebody was harmful to her, but if I don't like somebody or trust their motives, it's not for me to judge. I don't do that.
Such a fine line. It's so difficult because with girlfriends, when you get protective, if you do feel like you question someone's motives, I don't know. It's bad if you say it, and then if they stay together.
Once again, the fine line is if something is harmful to somebody, I would let them know. If somebody was doing something deceptive, I would let them know.
But they have to ask
One time,
first.
somebody that Cher was dating had cheated on her, and I found out about it because this person was making out with another woman somewhere without any hints. And I told him, I said, look, I know what went on, and you can continue to do whatever you want, but I'm going to have to tell her. So either you tell her or I'm going to tell her. And they kind of broke up and it fizzled out right then.
Okay,
and I
good.
told her, 20 years later, I told her what happened.
20 years
15.
later. Did she tell you? Why didn't you say something sooner?
No. No, because we have this innate, how do I put it? We know each other so well because we grew up together. I mean, I was 21. She was just turned 26. And we know each other so well. I don't push her. And she knows me so well. You know how you know somebody so well that you know how they think and you know how they're going to react. And it's just, I was just in Italy in August and she called, coincidentally, the day I arrived in Florence, she called and they're talking and it's like no time has stood still, but I don't see her all the time because now she has a boyfriend and she's doing a different thing. She's not touring. She makes appearances and she goes to fashion shows and does all of that. And she looks great and all that. And I'm in my travel era myself, but I'm doing it with my one son is a musician and he's on tour, so I have to travel to see him. My other son lives in New York, so I just went to see him. And then I have friends all over the place and in Europe, and I want to go to Europe all the time because this is...
I do too.
Well, you're young. You have a lot of time. I'm in my, golden years.
Seriously? I mean, when you told me, I thought you're, in your late 40s at most.
What?
I was like, no, seriously.
Are you
So
crazy?
okay, so at a certain point when you
I have a son who's 47.
at a certain point when you told me the stuff that you and Cher did together, and I kind of started doing the math that because obviously we all know how old she is just because she's so public.
79.
Yeah, so when you said you guys are similar in age, I was like, huh? Like, it just didn't make any sense to me.
When I tell the stories about stuff we've done, I go, how else could that have happened if we weren't about the same age?
How do you stay so vibrant, so hot looking? So, like, is it just your
so sweet.
I mean, obviously working out, eating healthy,
No,
but
I swear it's whatever you see. I personally think it's my attitude and my energy level. Like, I've been blessed with probably my father walked every day. I walk like 5 miles a day and do Pilates, but I got blessed with his genetics and vitality, his energy, and so it just, and Armenian skin. Like, I haven't had any plastic surgery, and I'm literally probably my last two friends, the only one that hasn't is my sister. My last two friends that hadn't had work just got work done. So so I haven't done that
amazing
kind of thing, but I just feel lucky to be able to like go enjoy these trips. Like, I want to do it as much as I can before I can't like walk a million miles and
I don't think you're
climb
gonna
the
have
steps of some monastery. Or,
I don't think you're going to have that problem anytime soon. Was there ever a point where the whole like CIA family, the going to the White House with Cher, although that was probably much later in the years, but like, is there a time where like entertainment and politics kind of cross over in your life?
The first time it did, and this was the time we touched on. So in 1976, Jimmy Carter was the president, elected president. And it was in that time that it was really difficult because Cher was with Greg, I was with Dickie. And the only reason why Jimmy Carter was elected, and he says it in his documentary clearly, the Allman Brothers did benefit concerts to raise money because it's very expensive to run a campaign, and the government had something called match funds. So whatever you made from the sale of tickets for big concerts, amphitheaters and, huge concerts, the government would match the funds. So the Allman Brothers did a series of benefit concerts for Jimmy Carter starting in 1975 in preparation for the election. So I met Dickie in September in New York. In October, I met the soon-to-be president, at the benefit concert in Atlanta. Cher was with Greg. Everything was fine. We were all on tour with them. Then 1976 rolls around. Dickie gave me an ultimatum. Either you come and move in with me or, we can't do this long distance thing anymore. So I had to make a decision. Now, Cher's having problems with Greg. She gets pregnant by him. And Elijah, her son, was going to be born in July. I had to go and tell her that I was going to move with Dickie. And that was when we stopped speaking to each other. Now we're both at the inaugural frickin' ball in Washington for Jimmy Carter, not speaking to each other.
Wow.
So that's our first political run-in, was the Jimmy Carter presidency, because the Allman Brothers did so many benefit concerts, and he was very loyal to the band. I was nursing Dwayne in 1978 when we went to a garden party at the White House. I remember because, well, did you nurse?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, the milk thing, I had like a off the shoulder dress, and I could feel the milk coming in, and it started leaking. And I was in the bathroom in the White House half the night trying to blot all because I had gone past my hours before it was time to nurse. My parents lived in Arlington, Virginia, across the river. So we flew there. Dwayne was 2 months old. He was born April 78, and in June we were invited to this dinner concert at the White House, and I left the baby with bottles of milk, my breast milk, and yeah, that's my memory of that.
Wow.
Then my husband at the time went to party with a bunch of other musicians at a hotel that night. I was ready to kill him because I was like ready to go home to the baby. But first one. Then I went to the White House with Cher for the Bushes, the older Bush, Barbara Bush, and she did some. It was when we were there with the craniofacial kids, because after Cher did the movie Mask, she became the honorary chairwoman of the Craniofacial Foundation and did a lot of work with the craniofacial kids. And we were there, and we went to the Barbara Bush and George Bush White House. And then I met President Obama. He was here for fundraising, and Cher took her mom and me and her sister and another friend, and we got to meet the president and have our pictures taken with him and all of that. And then Hillary Clinton. She stumped for Hillary Clinton. I met her a couple times. I met her at a party in Santa Monica for a fundraising thing that Cher did. And also she stumped for her all over, from Miami to New York to Boston to Michigan. We were in Michigan. Unfortunately, Hillary didn't come to Michigan, but we were in Michigan, 3 different stops. And so, yeah, there's politics. And so that's a lot of presidents. We won't be invited to the Trump White House.
Biggest life lesson with this crazy life you've lived. What do you wish people knew?
Well, it's kind of that life is much simpler. We complicate it with so much stuff. And I really do. I mean, I know it sounds 12-steppy, and I had a husband who was an alcoholic, so I went to Al-Anon, and I got this thing, and it really works. Because then later, my older son had a drug problem, but living one day at a time. Like, things seem overwhelming, but it can change in a day or a minute or an hour or a week. But just know it will change. And if you just hang in there and keep things simple, the simplest thing, people overthink. And overthinking is a joy killer. If you overthink something, you will beat it into the ground and worry about something needlessly that isn't going to happen. So why not go in with like even anything that causes anxiety for people, that's my tool. I just go, I'm just going to go in there and just do it. You know, like I don't overthink how it's going to go or what I'm going to say or worry about things. Like I spent a lot of time overthinking when I was young that I don't do now.
You grew up with a lot of powerful and influential people and movers and shakers in your life. So how did that shape the trajectory in your life with what you wanted to do, the kind of entrepreneurial decisions you made, the kind of personal life decisions you made?
I just realized I didn't even tell you about the second clothing company after my younger son was born.
Yeah, because you had one with a baby clothing line too, right?
It was called Love Child.
I remember
And all
that.
the celebrities' kids wore it at the time. We don't need to talk about that. But how has that impacted me? I have seen, this is how I'm going to answer this because it's the truth. You know, in The Wizard of Oz, when you see behind the curtain and you see the real wizard, I feel like I've seen the real wizard. I've been around long enough in behind closed doors in so many different venues that I wouldn't want the life of a celebrity because it's so under a microscope, especially now with the internet and everybody weighing in on everything. But it's made me so understanding of how everything is, and to just let go and leave what doesn't serve me. That's why I never inherently, I always knew I didn't want to do anything that I was in the spotlight, because I wouldn't want my life dissected. I love being independent and free to go wherever, and nobody cares who I am or what I'm doing, unless I'm at a Cher concert, and then everybody cares where I am because they know that I'm her friend. And that's how I, at 75, have 26,000 people on my frickin' Instagram. Like, when would that ever happen?
We did get a lot of fan questions from them, yes. And
That's
they wanted
funny.
to know when your next workout video is with Cher. I didn't know you guys did a workout video together.
We did, yeah. In the 90s, when I did all the hair infomercial, I also did the exercise videos. Really great class. We still used to work out to it till the
Wow.
end. We used to do, do you know what step is?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a step video. She also did a couple other videos that I wasn't in, like, I don't even know what they were now, thinking about, but the step video was a big one, and we still worked out to it. It's still so good, like really cardio,
Yeah.
But I got to meet all these people because of the same way I met you, because of Instagram, because of the internet. Everybody's so connected. And I'm so open. I mean, I'm like too open, maybe, which is why I say I'm the opposite of Cher. She's an introvert. She's closed off. She's not at all like this persona she gives of being really out there. She's not. She's very thoughtful, introspective, quiet, likes her alone time. And I can't be alone for 2 seconds. I'm out there and I have to go. And there was a time, like, she kids me about it, and I teach her about her, thing. But I also am surrounded by, like, my husband is like her. My sons are kind of different than me, too, that way. And so everybody just kind of accepts me the way I am, and, But it's just made me see behind the curtain who everybody is and what it is. And it's kind of all done with mirrors. It's show business, after all. It's show business. What they show is it's a show. It's not, I've been friends with the real person for 50 years that supersedes any title, like Academy Award winning actress or whatever. Like, I know her and I like her. And quite honestly, my favorite times aren't, although the first Met Gala was pretty spectacular, but it's not all the trips to, wherever, and all the events I went to with her and premieres. Last Tango in Paris premiere. Led Zeppelin comes to town. We went to the party for the Doobie Brothers, Led Zeppelin, for Rod Stewart, for Elton John. I've been to everything and everywhere. And my favorite thing is just hanging out and being girls, like with her sister G and Cher and I, when we used to sit on the tour bus and laugh and be in Amsterdam with those crazy American guys that were so stoned, and they wanted us to go back to their hotel with them on that trip to Europe when we were in our 20s. And he slipped, and we still say the word sacrifuck because of this guy, Donnie, who was trying to say, come on, come back to our hotel. It's just a sacrifuck. And we went, huh? He meant to say just a sacrificial whatever. I don't know what he was trying to say, but we still say sacrifuck because of him. And then we have like our own little language of things that we say. Those are the real memories.
What do you think people would be most shocked to learn about her? A side of her that you feel like people don't see.
She's childlike. She's very childlike to me.
Maybe that's where the vulnerability comes from that
It
you
is. I mean,
described.
She's stern and she's tough and she's bawdy. Everybody's heard her quotes,
Oh my God. Can I just say what was trending on TikTok was when they asked her about Madonna when it was I think in the 80s that they asked about Madonna. And she just had such a great comeback, I was like, oh, she really is iconic.
I mean, all her things, like, Mom, I am a rich man.
Yes.
When her mom said, like,
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
a friend who sent me the thing how it's trending in Korea because some famous Korean singer has now done a whole song with that sample. Mom, I am a rich man. I
No
am.
way.
But all of those things, like, she comes off as so omnipotent and strong, and she is, but that's the dichotomy. She's childlike. Like,
Yeah.
I look at her like, oh, I have to take care of Cheryl. I don't call her Cher. I call her Cherylina. And that started 50 years ago. And now, unbeknownst to me, all the fans started
Calling
referring
her
to her as Cherylina because I would say it in a video. I used to post, remember Snapchat?
Yeah.
Remember those crazy videos where you could have like leopard ears and a tail? And so I made her do them with me when we were on tour and bored. And I do Snapchats and, it would change your voice and stuff. So all the fans love those. They really got into them. And now they write and say, you need to do more of those. I'm like, I'm not going to drive over there and get out a whole Snapchat. She's not into it. Like, that was my thing that I made her do silly stuff that I like to
But
do.
people probably loved it because they got to see a side of her they would not ordinarily
and also
see.
they saw her through my eyes because when I was on tour, I would take my phone and go in and do an interview with her like before the show, and Cher always called it my school teacher voice when I go, well, tell me, Cher, what are you doing now? Oh, okay, is that because this and that and the other? And people would get, like, I posted something for her birthday, a video of her eating a cupcake, and people got mad. Who's talking to her like she's a child? That's so offensive.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, well, that's me, and I don't know how to really interview. That's how I speak. But that's what she calls my school teacher voice when I talk to somebody like they're little. But you can tell she's childlike by that video. She answers me like that, so I talk to her like that. It's our dynamic.
Yeah, it's fun. Sometimes people need to just not take things so seriously.
Well,
and
that's what they do now, isn't it?
Oh my
People
God,
make a judgment.
dissect everything. Yeah.
You have to be careful now about everything.
You do and you don't. It's like, on one hand, you feel like you have to be careful because everything will be taken out of context and everything can be used against you. But on the other hand, if they want to, it's going to happen anyway. They can take this conversation, take, parts of it, piece it together, make it sound completely like something else.
And now with AI, who knows what's real?
You don't even need to say anything. They could say it for you. And so then it's just like, God, you can't
Look at your kids, and you're young. You're young still. You've got kids that are growing up with the internet, which you didn't. Kids that have devices constantly that you're going to have to... How old are your kids?
5 and 1.
Oh, well, the 5-year-old probably wants a device if they don't have it already.
He does have one. So I'm one of those parents who definitely always felt like I don't want my kids to have too much screen time and all of that. But our son actually learned the alphabet before he was 2 years old because he was playing on my husband's phone. And so he, before he could even talk, he knew all the letters. And so we try to keep a balance where, thankfully he's not one of those kids that really wants to be on the phone all the time anyway.
Yeah.
He likes to draw. He likes to go outside and play.
That's good.
But we do if he wants to get creative with it, he loves taking photos. He takes pictures of his baby sister. And,
that's so sweet.
He plays educational games. So we do allow that.
That sounds good. But it is a whole new world, and you're going to have to navigate with AI now.
Oh my
Whereas,
God,
I don't think there was a smartphone until 2007 or something. That's not so long ago in the total scheme of things.
No.
And now look at it. It's just
See, we know how to be completely without it, and then what life was like once it came around. So obviously my kids won't know what it was like without all of that. I mean, I remember playing Tetris on big computers,
I was the last one to the party. I mean, I am technically challenged. My husband's the producer of South Park, and he's technically like heads and shoulders, and a musician. He's like a tech head kind of guy. and he always has to learn new technology for the show. And so he'll take a book and read how to operate new whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was so challenged with when smartphones came in, I didn't do anything. And the reason why I know how to do anything is because when Cher went on tour, I was bored because I wasn't working. And I learned how to do Instagram. That gave me something because I love pictures. I've always had photo albums from the old days. Good thing I have them now. But I learned how to do Instagram, and that made me learn how to not be afraid of technology in my phone. So I learned how to do all my stuff, and now I'm like a ridiculous teenager. I have my phone with, it's in the other room right now. This is the longest I've been away from my phone in a long time.
Okay, well, so now what's on your bucket list? I know traveling for sure is going to keep happening, but other than that, like, is there any kind of, I don't know, personal wish where you just feel like I have to make this happen soon?
Well, the first thing came to mind because I happened to call about the puppy. So we had our golden doodle, Betty, who died a year ago when we were in Paris for Bruce's birthday and our anniversary, August 26th. We were in Paris on a rooftop at Giraffe Hotel, a Giraffe restaurant overlooking the Eiffel Tower. And the next day we got a call that Buddy had a stroke from a seizure. And that was horrible. So we're getting a puppy now. And I just, it's the trips. I'm going to Morocco in March. My friend Alessandro, who's from Florence, and he owns this jewelry company. It's called Nomination, and it's an Italian company that his father started. They're all stackable jewelry.
Beautiful.
And he has 158 stores in Europe. And every year for his birthday in March, like one year we went to Paris, and then last year we were in Barcelona, and we go somewhere different every year for his birthday. And I picked him up on tour in a hotel lobby. He had nothing to do with Cher. It was him standing in a lobby in a hotel in Washington, D.C., and I went up to him and I said, I don't know who you are or what you do, but you were so chic. And he's like 42, and I wasn't trying to do anything other than tell him he was chic. And we started talking, and he said, what are you doing here? And I go, oh, I'm here in town with Cher. He goes, Cher? I go, Cher?
There's just one Cher.
And then when we went on tour to Europe, he just DM'd me, thank God for Instagram, and said, I'll come to London, we'll hang out, we'll go to dinner. And I went, great. And then he came to Ireland. And then we were going to plan this whole trip to Italy, and the pandemic happened. Then he came to L.A., and now I go and see his family 3 times a year, and he comes and spends Thanksgiving with us. So it's been
so
fun
doing
that. So I want to continue to do that. Bruce is still doing South Park, and South Park's kicking ass with all the new shows this season. They got a lot of press for
I love that.
For coming out with things that we're all living through.
Yes, we want your husband with South Park and my mom with The Simpsons going strong. We need
Simpsons
them to keep
and
going
South
strong.
Park are kicking ass.
Yes.
Simpsons has been on longer than South Park. South Park's 28 seasons now.
All so impressive and incredible. I just hope they keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he will be doing that until there is no more South Park, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he's way younger than me. He'll be fine. He and his next wife can.
You're so funny.
Anyway,
What's your age
I don't
difference?
have any aspirations other than maybe to get my book out there.
Oh,
it's
yes,
written,
you do need to do
but
that.
I need to really think about if I want to publish it.
Of course you have to publish it. Oh my
Do I?
God. Yes. Are you kidding?
I don't know.
No, you do. I mean, I was so
I don't know if anybody cares enough more than like this interview, you know?
No, of course they will. And I was so excited to have you on because there's so many interesting things to talk to you about, and we haven't even covered like 5% of it. So
We got a lot covered at that lunch for a very concentrated time.
Yeah.
And I feel like we did it more. But what killed me when I went to prepare to come here today to see that Joe
Manganiello.
Is that how you pronounce
Yeah, I
it?
had to practice it a few times before he
I
came
said
by. Yeah.
Manganiello.
Yeah.
Joe Manganiello I knew he was half Armenian from his mother's side, I assume, by his name. But hearing that his great-grandmother and my grandmother are from the same little town.
And they probably knew each other then, huh? It's very
probably
possible.
same age.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, my grandmother was 12. I
Yeah.
don't know how old. Maybe his great-grandmother was older how old is he? Is he 50 or is he?
I think he's in his 40s. I'm not sure how old he is.
So he's the age of my son, which is why his great-grandmother,
Yeah, it's so fascinating. But this is what I really admire about Armenians. It's like no matter how much or how little Armenian blood we have in us, it's like somehow there's that connection, and it's really inexplicable.
I can tell you the Armenian women that I see, I am so connected. At my doctor's office, my internist's office, in the lab is an Armenian woman, and I talk to her. My dentist, the receptionist, is Armenian. She just had a wedding for her son, and I looked at the pictures. I feel more connected to those women because I see them and I know they're like my people.
Yeah.
And I feel more like an Armenian now than I ever did.
Yeah. And it's really incredible because you and how proactive Cher was when she felt like she could do something for Armenia and to get more press coverage in order to send more aid and assistance to Armenia. Kirk Kerkorian and, Larry King told me a lot of incredible stories about how involved Kirk Kerkorian was. And he said in our conversation, too, that he was just such a great Armenian for the Armenian cause, and he educated.
Absolutely was. How did you get involved with Larry King? Was it because of his friendship with Kirk Kerkorian?
No, it was completely by coincidence. Somebody I was working with said that Larry King is starting a show and that I can go work for him. At the time, I was actually in Armenia with my husband, so I flew back just because I couldn't pass on that job. I was like, oh my God, what an incredible opportunity. And then I felt like Larry King was somewhat like a mentor to me because he was fascinating. I mean, just, 10-minute conversation with him, you get like a wealth of knowledge. He was an incredible man. I really loved the guy. But yeah, he said that Kirk Kerkorian was instrumental in like really filling him in on everything that happened with Armenia's history, and it was really amazing that he was not hesitant to share his stories, his personal stories, and getting death threats from Azerbaijan. Even though he got death threats, he wasn't afraid to talk about it.
Incredible. No, he was so involved, and thank God for him because he really rallied for his people. Now you need a Kardashian to talk about their...
Yeah. Have you met them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Well, my son went to school with Kendall and Kylie, and they were really good friends. In fact, I had two other boys that lived at my house for the high school years. They had a couple things happen with their family that they needed to stay somewhere, and they lived at our house too. And one of them, Julian, played basketball and football with my son. He played basketball before high school. So when high school started, he moved in, and he was Kendall's boyfriend till, like, she was a model already in the beginning. So they, I've seen them around and all that, but I've met Kim and Courtney at the Promise premiere and at the Met Gala. Didn't I show you my pictures?
No.
Okay. Kim was with Kanye, and Cher was dressed in Marc Jacobs that night, and Kim was wearing a copy of her version of Cher's dress.
Oh, okay.
I will show you the picture after this.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to Kim, and I said, and this is before the Promise, it was 2015 when we were at the Met Gala, and Kendall was there, and Kendall knew me from school because Kendall was a cheerleader, and my son played football and basketball.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and Kylie was the little sister and best friends with my son's best friend's little sister, so I saw those girls a lot. Anyway, Chris is the one I don't know, but Kim was with Kanye, and I was getting a picture taken with him, and Cher photobombed the picture. She's in the far right. And to have Cher be the photobomb in this picture with me and Kanye and Kim, pretty funny, you know? So her, and then she and Courtney came to the Promise premiere, and we were all on the red carpet, hanging out, talking. And so, yeah, I've met her a few times, kind of like that.
So does it come up then too, the whole Armenian connection?
There wasn't enough time it doesn't come up at the Met Gala. It doesn't come up on the carpet other than in generality about how it's a long time coming to have a film about this. And Eric Israelian, who's hugely active in the Armenian community and who's the head of something at UCLA that makes all the celebrities know him. He's on the board at the Academy Museum. He's on the board of everything. And he's an incredible. Do you know Eric Israelian?
We've met a few times. I don't know him closely.
Oh, he's the most amazing man. Love him. And he helped Cher along the way with something as he does all the celebrities. So they all know him. And, they have a wing in their father's name, the Kardashians, and Robert Kardashian's name at UCLA, and he helped with all that. So the last time I saw Eric was at the Academy Museum Gala. Lady Gaga was performing. I went with Cher, and we were at Eric's table, and it was like Angela Bassett and, Cher and Eric Israelian, and I was sitting there, and everybody comes to pay homage to him. He's just a wonderful man. His family's great, too.
Awesome.
But he's close with the Kardashian. I think he's close with half of Hollywood, I swear. And the most down-to-earth person, because I've met a lot of people through her, and you kind of learn who is what. And he is truly one of the most down-to-earth. I'm proud that he's Armenian,
That's so nice. No, it's really amazing. And honestly, that's one of the things I appreciate about our culture the most, that, people go on their own paths, they become independently successful, but then they still give back to the community. And it's like everyone kind of has the same mission.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To strengthen our country. We all have a collective goal to make sure that we protect our people. So
that's well put, Sona.
Thank you.
Really well put.
This is like part 1 of 10, I feel like, because there's so much to talk to you about. So will you come back when you write your book?
Yeah. Well, no, the
when
book
you publish
is
your
when
book. Sorry, when you publish your book.
Absolutely. Yes. Anytime.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back, but before you're back, we'll have a lot of lunch and drinks.
I love this. And this was born from Instagram. I love that.
I know. That is so funny that we actually met on
other people
Instagram.
On Instagram that you've had
I
in
have.
here? How many?
I met the Avenged Sevenfold drummer Brooks Wackerman on Instagram, much like how I met you. Who
But he wasn't
else?
Armenian.
No, no.
So was he following you because of System of the Down?
Probably. I think again one of
I'm
the
thinking
interviews.
that might be because
Yeah.
you interviewed them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I would think the connection. I
Yeah.
love connections.
Yeah, and I
don't
think you said that you found my profile through the Joe Manganiello interview. So yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
cool that, when people notice the podcast and start following either my profile or the podcast profile, it's like it really makes me feel so great that okay, the message was valuable enough then for people to want to connect. So
Absolutely.
so that makes me very happy.
Yeah. No, you're doing a great job too. I've listened to all of them, and you're like a seasoned interviewer already.
Oh, thank you.
So how long have you been doing interviews?
Not very long. I did a project called High Brand. When I actually started that project when I was living in Armenia, because I just saw that there are so many wonderful aspects of our culture, our country that we're not taking enough advantage of in order to promote tourism and
yeah.
things that could really make investments and tourism better for the country. So I thought, why not make a program about it where people can talk about their experiences in enhancing the culture, and maybe provide, proactive steps that we can take in order to make things better for the
great.
country. So the first person I interviewed was the U.S. ambassador to Armenia at the time.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I came back here, and since I was working with Larry, I interviewed Larry King, and then
How long ago was this? What
this
year?
was 2018, I believe.
And what year did Larry King die?
It was right after COVID.
Yeah.
So I think that was
Okay.
2020 or
What
2021.
did this just remind me of? Oh, my internist, Dr. Meg, went to Armenia.
Oh,
He just went. He was telling me how fabulous it is.
it's amazing.
He's
yeah.
a doctor. He went with a friend who was Armenian who wanted him to come. And it turned out like we were at Hotel Yerevan. I don't know what's called now. It was 30 years ago when I was
Yeah.
there. But he was showing me his pictures, and I went, that's where we were staying. And he was saying how it was like flourishing and how people
Oh, you
were...
haven't been back
No,
since?
I have not.
Oh, my God.
I haven't been there since all of that.
Okay, we're going to go back together.
I wanna
Okay,
go.
you will absolutely love it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
How
But,
often do you get to go back?
I was going back very often, and then after COVID and having babies, it got a little more difficult.
Where are you
but,
flying? Are you flying to London and then, or what are you doing?
The last time I flew, which was in 2023, I flew to Vienna, and from Vienna to Yerevan.
Yeah, with babies, with a 1-year-old.
Yeah, it's a little hard. So in a few months, hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll get to do that. But yeah, to answer your question, it was the sporadic interviews for that. And then it just kind of organically grew into...
Very cool.
Yeah, it evolved into this podcast. And I just really didn't want it to be like an interview. I wanted it to be just fun conversations where, interesting stories are
Well,
shared.
you're easy to talk to, and like you've got a good grasp of the subject that you're doing, so you can flip back and forth easily.
you.
Because a lot of people I've noticed can't keep up with the story, and so they'll lose a part. But you seem to remember all the moving parts.
Well, you know what the challenge is that when there are so many different interesting aspects to one story, you don't want to interrupt the story. I hate interrupting people because I hate when I'm listening to a good story. I hate when the host interrupts.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
want to let the person finish the story all the way through, but then you have to
it's
go back to
a
all of
delicate
the fun.
balance, though,
Yeah.
because sometimes people, like I caught myself thinking, God, you've been talking for a long time, Paulette. I was thinking, maybe I should stop now.
No,
If
no.
somebody's rambling on, you don't
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
but it's cool. And we flip-flop back and forth, but it all
Yeah.
is connected in a weird way,
And that's, yeah,
like the past, the present, the future, it's all
totally.
a story.
Totally. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you for
and
having
doing
me.
this.
I really enjoy this. I was looking forward to talking to you.
Oh, I was looking
Again.
forward to this too. Yeah. Okay, so lunch, drinks, and then Armenia, and then we'll come back and do this again after
Where
your
do you
book's
go
published.
for food? I've only been to,
Carousel.
yeah, I told you that.
Oh my God, there's so many. I'll take you. We'll go. We'll go to a lot of interesting, yummy Armenian
I do
places.
love my Armenian food. I cannot lie.
Oh my God, yeah. There's this place.
Do you make it?
I don't so much. A little bit here
Yeah.
and there. Not like the really
Right.
great stuff. But there's a place called Impressions in Glendale. They have really great Armenian food. So we could go there.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
up for it anytime.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
A huge thanks to Torpedo Comics and Essentia Beauty Spa for helping to make this podcast possible. You've probably seen Torpedo Comics in your local malls, but you can also visit them online at torpedocomics.com for an amazing selection of comics and collectibles. As for Essentia Beauty Spa, their beauty experts are truly unparalleled. I trust Diana, the founder, with all of my hair needs. She's simply the best. For more information, visit essentiabeautyspa.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Your support helps this channel grow, allowing us to bring you even more engaging and high-quality content. You can also follow us across all social media platforms.